It's a time in our service where we collect an offering. To those attending MCC Boston through our YouTube page, you too can participate by going to our website at mccboston.org and clicking on the donate button there for that purpose. Thank you for being a part of our church family. Members and friends of MCC Boston, as we're moving toward our last MCC Boston service, I thought it might be somewhat interesting to revisit the first call to offering that I gave here at MCC Boston. Note that at the time, UFMCC had significant financial problems, and the Global Justice Institute had yet not been established. The call begins, "It's great, isn't it, to have a community like MCC Boston, a community that supports and lifts up our concerns." We need to remember, though, that not every place in the world is so blessed. I want to read to you an email that was received at UFMCC headquarters from a man in Pakistan who discovered UFMCC through our internet website. "I am a 25-year-old gay man from Pakistan. In this fundamentalist state, it is against the law to even think about being gay. Here you can be beheaded for being gay. I think God has done an injustice to me to make me gay. I am feeling very alone as I can't discuss this matter with even my closest friend. The feeling of loneliness and deprivation is practically killing me. Please tell me what to do. I feel like a misfit here. Your web gave me a new perspective, and I felt hope inside me. I hope to hear a favorable reply from you." Portions of the letter are deeply disturbing and offer a powerful reminder of the importance of UFMCC ministry. Unfortunately, the denomination couldn't help this man, as UFMCC doesn't have a church in Pakistan, and the money set aside for global justice work is simply not there due to shortfalls associated with reduced income from local churches. Remember that a part of every dollar donated to MCC Boston helps to support this type of ministry. As the basket comes around, please give what you can to support this church and the ministries of UFMCC. End of the quote. As we revisit this call, there's much that still resonates with us today. While it is unfortunate that many of our queer siblings are still living under homophobic and transphobic regimes, the presence of social media has now made the life-saving messages of MCC literally come alive. Besides our social media presence, the Global Justice Institute is working in many parts of the world helping to improve the lives of queer folk through practical intervention. But even with this progress, the need for UFMCC's message is still urgently needed. Even here in America, our trans siblings are still under attack. The work of MCC and the Global Justice Institute is not finished, and as queer individuals who have been touched and blessed through their association with MCC, our call is not finished either. So this week, as we move toward Palm Sunday, and on to our second to last MCC Boston worship service, keep the work of UFMCC and the Global Justice Institute in your prayers.
When I hear this story, I think about teenagers crying. It takes me right back to times in my youth when I sat in the dark, surrounded by other teens at some retreat or camp or youth group, and hearing everyone around me get emotional. Sobbing and breathing heavy, doing just about everything but beating their chests and dressing in sackcloth. This was, after all, the Bible Belt, so going to worship services and getting tearfully remorseful about one's youthful indiscretions was a rite of passage. And the prodigal son is such a perfect story to engage with these themes of the errors of youth and the expansive forgiveness of God. It hits the mark every time. Worship planners would get together and turn all the lights out and read this story, and like a charm, every other youth in the place would get tearful, reflecting on their sinful ways, crying with remorse because they drank alcohol or tried drugs or because they had been physically intimate, perhaps even with a few people, without marrying. Scandalous. And we would all just sit in the dark for who knows how long, and everyone would cry, thinking about the ways they too have disowned their father and squandered a rich inheritance. And I would sit there in the dark, listening to everyone get weepy, And I would feel nothing. Because all those youthful indiscretions they were crying about were foreign to me. Not because I was a better person than any of them. No, I was just deep in the closet, and therefore terrified of sex in general. And I was also terrified that if I ever tried alcohol or marijuana or any substance, that I would lose my inhibitions and accidentally out myself. So I had never done any of that. And those are really the two acts everyone was crying about, just sex and drugs. Rock and roll, of course, having been declared permissible by the Second Council of Nicaea in 787 CE. I was, at the time, immune from guilt over those two things because I had never indulged in the first place. On the sin front, all I really had to repent for was the fact that I cursed like a sailor even then, and that I was about as devoted to the practice of onanism as every other teenage boy. And neither of those indiscretions really seemed worth the tearful state that all the kids around me were experiencing. When we discussed the prodigal son, even back then, I was resigned to living the example of the elder brother rather than the younger, which just isn't as emotionally impactful. It doesn't have that same cathartic power. As with every other Bible story, the younger brother is the favored one. The elder brother gets no tearful moment of reunion. He gets no father running from a distance to wrap his arms around him and kiss him. He doesn't get the fatted calf either, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that the return of the younger brother and the embrace of his father is just about the most perfect image in the Bible. It is perhaps the summation of all Christianity in one scene. It is enduring and inspiring and just overwhelmingly beautiful. How deep God's love for us. How wonderful to witness the affection between a father and son reunited when it was never promised. The elder brother gets no happy ending. He gets reprimanded for being so upset that he'd boycott the feast. He gets told that he should have been content with the love his father had given him all along. He gets to be grateful for the quotidian, while his brother gets that big moment of tearful, joyous, loving reunion with his father that has forever impacted the course of his life. The elder brother gets told that if he wanted a young goat, he should have just asked for one. And it's not as if the elder brother has no case. His younger brother abandoned them, left the family, and essentially declared that it makes no difference to him if his father lives or dies, which was the implication of his request for the inheritance. The elder brother not only gets to deal with his own grief over his estranged brother, but he also has to take on the role of emotionally supporting their father through the same grief. He gets to be the one to toil on the farm and work in the fields. He gets to be the one who is responsible for making sure that life in his father's house goes on after his younger brother runs away. I can see why he would be upset about that. I know the burden of being the one to pick up the slack, to put the pieces back together after someone else breaks a heart. So I can understand why he'd be upset that his younger brother, after causing all that trouble and all that grief, gets to just stroll back into their lives as if nothing happened. To be fair, the younger brother understands that too. That's what he expected. In a way, the two of them agree that the younger brother has forfeited the right to be called a son. The elder brother is just the one of them with the nerve to challenge their father's forgiveness. And so it makes sense to me that he would be so upset that his brother would come back. Upset that he gets to reclaim his title as a son just like that. And then the fact that his father would spend so much throwing a welcome party home for the younger brother that abandoned all responsibility and left others to pick up his slack. By the metrics of his cultural context, the elder brother has every right to be upset. What the elder brother expected to happen is what anyone at that time would have expected to happen. The way his father actually behaves is what's surprising. And this is also true of our cultural context. We love to decide who deserves what. Who deserves grace? Who deserves to be cared for? Who deserves to be spared the consequences of their actions or inactions? And who must be forced to face them? We love to watch the grasshopper starve through the winter because he wasn't wise enough to store up resources like the ant. We love to watch humble, hard-working Cinderella marry the prince while her sisters get their feet cut up and their eyes pecked out. We love to watch people get good things when we think they've earned them, when they've worked for them. So of course we also love to decide who deserves, who has earned God's grace and love, even though that very notion runs entirely contrary to what grace means. And this attitude is slowly suffocating our society. So many of us suffer just because it's been decided by the general population that they deserve to suffer. We could end homelessness tomorrow and save money doing it. That would cost less than maintaining the current infrastructure supporting the homeless. But we don't. Because so many people out there believe that the homeless don't deserve housing, that they haven't earned it. Like the elder brother, they just can't get over the feeling that they're being ripped off somehow, that someone else being cared for is unfair to anyone who is able to take care of themselves. We spend billions of dollars every year means testing Social Security, unemployment, food stamps. We could provide financial assistance to millions more, make life easier for so many struggling people, but we don't. Because we have to spend all that money making sure that no one who receives financial assistance who doesn't deserve it. Criminal justice, education, you name it, we are constantly making problems worse just because making them better would necessitate being good to people. And we'd rather suffer ourselves than let other people be treated well when they haven't earned it. So even if we'd rather not admit it, we're no better than the elder brother because our society is built on the same principle. The principle that life, health, and wellness are all things which must be earned through labor. And if you listen to no other part of this sermon, pay attention here. This attitude, this refusal to support people who haven't earned it, this is not Christian. This is the antithesis of Christianity. No matter what you may hear, Christianity at its root is premised on grace, on the practice of refusing to hold anyone's actions against them, on a clean slate to everyone, no matter what they've done or who they've been. That is our faith. The belief that people grow when they know their mistakes aren't being tallied against them. That old man running towards his son who has messed up colossally, brought himself to ruin, eating pig food. Christianity is what it looks like when that man runs to his son and hugs him and kisses him. If you can't do that, if you can't love people because you don't like what they've done, if you can't be good to people unless you believe they deserve it, then you are not a Christian. Now, in some ways, I feel sad for the elder brother, because I think he's really feeling insecure in his father's love. I think that instead of seeing his father's response to his long-lost brother as proof positive of the fullness of his father's love, he sees that old man running and he wonders why his father has never embraced him so tightly. I think he's so worried that he's getting a smaller share of his father's love that he doesn't even consider that his father comes out of the house for him too. Just as he comes out when he sees his younger son approaching, he also comes out to check on his elder son, to try to bring him into the party. He begs him, the text tells us. Both sons, at different points, refuse to be in their father's house, and on both occasions, the father comes out to bring them back in. The only difference is that the younger doesn't believe he deserves to enter in, and the elder believes he is too good to enter in. There is an economic principle known as artificial scarcity. Like most modern demons, it comes from capitalism. It works like this. Businesses produce more goods than they sell. They have a surplus. Normally, we would consider a surplus a good thing. It means we have enough to spare. But the objective of the business producing these goods is not to provide goods. The objective is to make a profit. And a surplus is bad for profit. It drives prices down and provides for consumers who aren't paying in. So even though they have enough, they will waste those goods rather than putting them into the hands of people who need them. We have enough food for everyone, but we can't give it to everyone because they won't make any money off of it. So they lock dumpsters and pour bleach on the food just to make sure no one gets a full belly unless they've earned it. We have enough housing for everyone, but we can't allocate it because the property owners won't profit off of it. So apartments sit empty for years while people sleep on the sidewalks. We live in a world in which we have the necessary materials to sustain life in such abundance that we could support everyone, but we won't because there's no way to get any money out of it. What the elder brother is doing in this story is creating a scarcity of his father's love. He is deciding that his father does not have enough love for both him and his brother, that his younger brother doesn't deserve his father's love, his father's support, gifts, celebration, and a fatted calf as thanks to God that his younger son lives and is home. That scarcity doesn't exist. There is no point in squabbling over his father's affection because there's enough. There's enough for both brothers. There's enough for all the household to celebrate. There's enough. The elder brother almost wants there to be a rivalry because he doesn't believe his brother deserves their father's love. But when there's enough for everyone, who cares about rationing? Who needs to argue about who does and doesn't deserve to be loved and celebrated? When we've achieved the dream of having enough so that everyone can get what they need, why waste a second debating who deserves to have their needs met? You all know people like this. Certainly our church knows people like this, who believe that others haven't been good enough to receive God's love, who feel the need to set limits around it so that the wrong people don't feel worthy to be loved by God, who think that we aren't good enough to come into God's house because we're queer, or because we've used substances, or because we've hurt people, or because we have sex outside of marriage, or because we have had an abortion, or because our clothes are dirty and we haven't showered, or because we are of a different faith, or a different race, or different nationality, or because we have tattoos, or because we are fat, or because we dance in the sanctuary, or because we voted for the wrong person. There is no shortage of reasons why people have been told they're not good enough for God's love. And they keep finding more anyway. But it doesn't matter. They don't have any control over God's love. God's love is wild and untamed, and all hers to give. And yes, some people will take advantage of it. That is the risk of grace. It is supposed to be scandalous. If it wasn't wild and unconditional and free to anyone who needs it, it wouldn't be grace and it wouldn't be God. And that's the important thing to remember about this story, I think. The elder brother can stay outside the house. He can protest. He can scream and beat his chest and bury himself in his own obstinacy. But no matter what he does, he can't stop his father from celebrating his brother. He can't put limits around his father's love. It's his father's house. And if his father wants to welcome his brother home, then that's what'll happen. In the end, the only power the elder brother has is the power to make himself miss the party, to deprive himself of the very happy ending he envies his brother for. And his father and brother might grieve his absence, but no one suffers but him. He's the one so preoccupied with who deserves to be loved that he misses the celebration. And all those people out there who try to put limits on God's love, they're exactly the same. No one suffers but them, because they have a God who loves them so completely, and they force themselves to believe that she doesn't. But they can say whatever they like, and it won't make God love her people any less. all her people, every single one of us on this planet, alive or dead or not yet born. None of their grumbling will stop God's grace from being that untamed force that pardons who she will and longs to bring every soul into that full life we were created for. They are free to stand outside, discussing who deserves to be cherished by God, cared for by God, brought into God's house and celebrated. And while they are all discussing that, the rest of us are free to party, to revel in God's love, knowing full well that God welcomes in every single one of us and can't wait to celebrate our arrival. No careless words, no searing glance, no acts of cruelty. There is no power in this world that can stop that old man from running out of the house and embracing his son. Thank you.